Hello, and welcome to another episode of Thoughts on, Blurbal Reasoning, because I keep forgetting that's what it's called, about, book 5 of the Wheel of Time, innit? Fires of Heaven. If this sounds slightly different to you compared to what it normally sounds like, it's because I'm recording this on my phone as I walk home. Why not wait until I get home, you may ask? Well, because then I'd have to boot up my PC and talk about it, and it's nighttime and people are sleeping, I'd have to be quiet. And frankly, I just want to get onto the next book because I'm loving it so much. So hopefully the audio quality isn't too much worse. In fact, I suspect it might be just a teensy bit better. If I sound slightly out of breath the entire time, though, that would be because, again, I'm walking home. My apologies. So I went to read the blurb, and it's the exact same blurb as the previous book. So I'm not entirely sure why that's the case, but that seems to be the case. So not much point doing that. So the first thing I want to do is provide a bit of context. At the time you're hearing this video, you haven't heard me say anything about the TV show, but the TV show's first 3 episodes, as of the time of talking, have aired. I was initially on the fence about whether I wanted to watch it while reading the books, because slight differences might mount up over time and confuse my impression of events, and the way I see characters in my mind's eye is going to change when I see the actors acting them, and maybe giving slightly different portrayal of them than I'd expect, but I decided to watch it anyway. I'm not going to get into what I thought about those episodes here because it's kind of irrelevant. I'll do another video about that another time. Be on the lookout for that, of course. But I just wanted to make you all aware that for those reasons previously stated about changing in my mind's eye about things, I have started watching the show alongside reading the books. And the first time I went to read the book after watching the show, I did have a bit of trouble picturing the characters. Like, they were kind of flickering. Well, I guess they weren't flickering, but it was hard to kind of bring up the kind of version of Matt, for instance, that I already knew. As I've said in the weekly Waypoint series that I also do, the version of Matt in the show is distractingly attractive, completely unlike the version I imagine in my head when I hear him voiced by Michael Kramer. The other thing I want to make you aware of is just that I have a slightly better understanding of the structure of the series in terms of fan reception. I'm aware that books 7 to 9 are considered a slog, harder to get through, much slower paced, but it's worth it for books 10 to 14. I will absolutely do my best to keep reading, and, maybe expect, if they are less enthralling, kind of longer gaps between thoughts on videos about them. Sorry, Blurbal Reasoning. I do need to be using this name that I gave this series, don't I? I'm rambling. What did I think about the Fires of Heaven? Bloody brilliant! That's what I thought about the Fires of Heaven. I will say that so far, every single book has had what feels like a defining lore bomb of, like, for instance, introducing to us how Tel'aran Riyadh works, or introducing to us the idea of these portal stones and the kind of half-imagined worlds and the potential parallel universes and how that all works, or, seeing Nynaeve and Egwene's kind of visions of the future as they're becoming accepted, and seeing that Egwene in the future could become the Amelin Seat and stuff like that. I feel like every book has one of those. This book didn't, arguably, but I think this book was almost entirely on the level of intrigue, almost entirely on the level of intrigue, as a few of those chapters per book have been. So in other words, what I'm saying is it might not have as much of a defining factor to it, but it's just a step above in terms of entertainment anyway, so it kind of makes up for it. I'm always fascinated by watching Rand's leadership and how he approaches situations, how he grows as a character and changes and hardens, for better or for worse, and how the world reacts around him. One of the most fascinating things about him in this book was his relationship with Moraine and how the power dynamic changed, or how it appeared to change so that she could at least retain some sort of, maybe not control over him, but at least some kind of influence over him if she couldn't control him like she always wanted to. In a similar vein, I also love that we saw Egwene becoming more Aes Sedai in this book and kind of being more on level step next to Moraine. I will say that Moraine tying Lan to, I believe it was to Nynaeve. I can't remember if that was explicitly stated or if that was something I puzzled out. But I believe, I've always felt since that happened a few books ago that Moraine did that to Lan, that was kind of like a Chekhov's gun moment, and that she was going to end up dying, obviously, because otherwise why would you write that in? So if we're going to talk about Moraine's death, which I guess we are, I'm not surprised. I wasn't surprised when it happened. And there were definitely like way more clear red flags in the chapters leading up to that point as well. Like when she started saying things to Egwene and Avienda, or saying things to Rand, sorry, about Egwene and Avienda, like make sure you keep them by your side. And then she's telling him he's going to do well and stuff. I was like, oh, Moraine's about to she's about to die. She's dead. Those are too many red flags to ignore. But I think the way that she died is extremely Moraine-esque, extremely fitting for her, in that she knew about it beforehand and didn't tell anybody and planned to have it happen. And she knew there were 3 different variations that might happen, and she was trying to account for all of them and trying to nudge things in the right direction. You know, like, how Moraine is that? Like, she absolutely died as she lived. One thing I will say kind of surprised me about the way death is dealt with in these books, because this is the first major character death we've had so far, is that we don't linger on it. And maybe that's just because I'm listening to this as an audiobook, so I don't like stop and stare at the page and reread the line and stop and absorb it, because it just keeps going. Hang on, there's a bus coming. Bloody hell, he nearly ran me over. Anyway, well, sorry, yeah, a bit scuffed this episode, isn't it? What was I saying? Yeah, it was so, like, oh yeah, it just happened. And then obviously, like, Rand's sad, Lan is obviously very much affected and stuff, but then it's like, oh man. And you know, he does talk about it like she's dead because I couldn't kill Lanfear and all this kind of thing, but at the same time it feels like, okay, time to invade Camelin. You know? But maybe, again, maybe that's just because I'm listening to it as an audiobook instead of stopping, absorbing it, you know, really reflecting on how I felt about it like I would with a regular physical-ass textbook. And of course, books don't contain all of the, like, kind of moments that a TV show would, where you would stop and there would be sad music and there would be people look at each other and then you'd feel a little bit sad. So maybe audiobooks are the awkward middle ground for that kind of storytelling. I am going to miss Moraine, though. I'm going to use Moraine as kind of leverage to shit on Nynaeve a little bit later on in this video, because Nynaeve really frustrated me in this book. And I'm concerned that people are just going to be like, wow, Christian's fine with the male chapters, but not with the female chapters. What's going on here? Listen, I really liked Moraine. She was really entertaining. But my God, Nynaeve. Oh my God, her chapters annoyed the shit out of me, the ever-loving shit out of me sometimes. Like, we get it. You're frustrated. You're always angry. You're always arguing with Elaine. There's a constant battle for who's in charge. And you're stubborn. And you want the world to do the things that you want to do, the stupid, wall-headed men of the world and everything. And, oh my God, dude, she's a chore to sit through. I'm sorry. I think this is a book I finally realised how much I dislike Nynaeve, at least outside of a battle setting. I do really enjoy her chapters in battle settings, like when she was taking on Mogadine at the end of this book again. That was really entertaining. That was really cool to watch. And I think it is specifically a thing with Nynaeve, because Elaine, I don't have those feelings about, and she had some point of view chapters as well, but my God, Nynaeve is just insufferable. I'm sorry. Even when she's not tugging at her braid every 5 minutes, she's kind of stopped doing that now. I just realised that anyone watching me and hearing me as I walk past their house talking into my phone like this probably thinks I'm just having a massive argument with someone called Nynaeve. Like, okay, there was a moment, right, when the whole Brigitte thing happened. By the way, Brigitte, I forget how she's pronounced. Brigitte, I think, where she gets shot out of a dream. And Nynaeve is like, oh my God, what have I done? I've made it so that she's probably not bound in the wheel anymore. She's not going to be reborn. My actions have consequences. I was really vain and stuff. And I'm not saying her being in that distressed state was a good thing, but I thought she would have like a learned moment from it. Like, maybe I shouldn't be so stubborn and self-righteous all the time, you know? But no, her arc went in the complete opposite direction, where that was her losing who she is, and she had to work her way back to being that person again, which is fine. But my God, like, Nynaeve's fine as long as I don't have to sit through her perspective, like her point of view chapters. Okay, I've probably ragged on Nynaeve a lot. Let's move on. One of my favourite aspects of this series is the whole death and rebirth thing, and how Tel Riyadh is connected to that, and how Brigitte, is our kind of vessel of like seeing how that works and kind of peeking behind the curtain of how the universe even works. And I've got to say, her being shot out of Tel Riyadh, and kind of the kind of implication is that she's been taken out of the cycle and death and rebirth, and when she dies in the real world, it's going to be her quote-unquote final death. That shit is So interesting to me. I absolutely love stories that deal with topics like this. Most recently, I've really enjoyed how World of Warcraft Shadowlands and the Ardenweald storyline talks about death and rebirth and the idea of having a final death and all that. It's super interesting to me. The idea of rebirth is very comforting to me personally, and the idea of a final death outside of that cycle of rebirth is so tragic, and like it's a really good story device for me personally. I love it. Well, actually, I hate it when people have their final deaths. I'm like, no. Sorry, I have to keep pausing because cars keep going past, and I'm thinking, bloody hell, it's like 12:30 at night. Why is everyone suddenly so busy? It's never this busy. It's because I'm trying to record a goddamn video, isn't it? I really love that Brigitte also ended up becoming Elaine's warder. I'm excited to see how that relationship develops. We haven't had much in the way of Aes Sedai warder relationships besides Moraine and Lan, so it's going to be interesting to see a different one in depth and detail. And the idea of a female warder where warders are almost 100% male across the board, across centuries, is also super fun and interesting. And I'm really excited to see what that means for Brigitte's character and how she's kind of portrayed and how the world reacts to her and stuff like that. It's awesome. At the end of a previous book, I said I was really interested in seeing what would happen with Min and the stilled. Oh God, why have I forgotten her name? What's her name again? Swan, sorry. Yeah, the previous Amelin seat and Logain and everything, and how that storyline's going to develop. I did like where it went. I feel like there's still a lot of it left to tell. Not much has happened with Logain recently. I have suspicions that maybe Nynaeve is going to have some kind of breakthrough in how to reverse stilling and whatever the male version of it is called, I forget. My head's a little bit empty, it's quite late at night and I've just finished work, if that wasn't already apparent. But yeah, because otherwise why would you write it, Chekhov's gun again, why would you write it into the story, her wanting to figure that stuff out if you weren't going to do something with it, right? As well as Rand saying at the end of a book that he wants to have male Aes Sedai, not male Aes Sedai, but you know what I mean, like male channelers in his army. All roads point to Logain becoming unstilled, especially since Min sees that halo around his head. How's he going to have any bearing on the story if he can't channel? I mean, he still could, and that could still be a really interesting avenue of events and the way things go, but I think Nynaeve is going to have a breakthrough. And I think the story perfectly sets her up to have a breakthrough in terms of reversing stilling and stuff like that, because at any other time, you'd be like, oh, really? She's the only one who can figure out how to do it out of, like, thousands of people who have tried over the years. That's a bit protagonisty, isn't it? But with this, it's like, you know, it's a very important time within the Third Age and everything. Like, you've got Taviran around altering the flow of fate or whatever, and I feel like it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. I'm really excited for Lan to realise that he is almost certainly being sent to Nynaeve, even though we're probably going to get about 30 chapters of Nynaeve and Lan arguing about what Lan told Rand to tell her towards the end of the book about him not loving her anymore. That's going to be fun, isn't it? Just shut up and kiss already! That's going to be my... Oh no, I made the waveform go red on my phone, I'm sorry. Now, we didn't get any Perrin in this book, which is interesting and kind of a shame, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of him in the next book. We had hardly any Rand in was it book 2 or book 3? There was a book where we hardly had any Rand perspective, so this isn't unprecedented, and I am guessing this might be a Song of Ice and Fire kind of an issue, where they had a whole book where half of the perspectives were missing. I've just started going up a very big hill, so apologies for even more breathlessness. Oh, actually, I said earlier that this book didn't have a quote-unquote hook to differentiate it from the rest. I'm kind of going to walk that back and say that it kind of does, in that we see Rand and Mat have this kind of connection to their past lives that people aren't supposed to have. It's obviously a little bit different though. Mat just has some memories of, I believe he's Emmon of Emmon's Field fame. I believe that's who he is, right? Maybe I'm wrong, maybe he's just Emmon's general or something, but I'm pretty sure he's Emmon himself. But he doesn't have like an actual personality talking at him. I am absolutely fascinated by the fact that Rand does. He has Luce Ferrin in his head talking at him, trying to take him over, or actually potentially not trying to take him over, as we learn in the final confrontation. He shouts no when Rand starts getting turned into Luce Ferrin by Ravine. I'm super interested to see where this self-conflict between Rand and Luce Ferrin ends up leading. I I kind of suspect that it's going to end up with them kind of fusing, because the idea is that Rand and Luciferin are the same soul, just of different generations, having led two different lives, the same way Brigitte has been known by several different names throughout her different lives. I'm excited for hopefully Rand to one day meet Brigitte and for her to tell him how it all works. There's still a lot of mystery surrounding Brigitte and the way that works, because she says that there are laws that bind her from obviously talking to people and telling them how this kind of thing actually works. Who knows if she's still bound by those laws now that she's in the world of the living again, but whose laws are they? Who made them? So many law questions. But yeah, I love how Rand's got that connection to Luciferin, but I also love how Matt's got his memories of the past and how it's shaping his personality, bleeding into his current weaving, his current life. And how he kind of like knows how to lead an army to battle, and how he's still constantly trying to run from who he is, run from his fate, run from the kind of stuff he could really help with. And that Rand finally corners him in this book and says, look, stop running, sit still, I need you. I've been waiting for that to happen for a little while. I don't find Matt nearly as exasperating as Nynaeve, but my god, he does like to repeat himself about trying to escape a lot, doesn't he? I love the little wrinkle of Melindra turning out to be a dark friend and trying to kill him, and now Matt's haunted by the fact that he's killed her in self-defense. That also led to this beautiful moment where everything kind of tied together, and I sat up in bed while listening to this and went, oh, where the confrontation between him and Lanfear is happening, and he's talking about how he can't kill her because he can't kill women. And I was just like, yeah, we've heard this all before. Like, obviously it's important now because it's happening now, but it was nothing I didn't expect. And then he talks about, you know, he's trying to kill Lanfear, and then he sees Matt's haunted face talking about having had to kill Melindra. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, that's a nice little way to tie it up together. And then he has a Luciferin flashback of, Ilyena, my love, forgive me. And I'm like, oh fuck, that's why he can't, like, obviously part of it is just because of, you know, he's grown up during in the Two Rivers. He's kind of young and naive. He doesn't want to see women as being potentially evil as well as men. He's always had that, but now he's kind of got like this subconscious leftover emotional baggage from Luciferin, in that, like, almost like he's the same person, wink wink nudge nudge, he still can't bring himself to kill Lanfear even though she's trying to kill him. He can't bring himself to strike this woman even in self-defense because of his, you know, emotional for lack of a better term, emotional baggage, having killed Ilyena when he was going mad in his previous lifetime. And the idea of mental distress going between lifetimes is so cool. Where are these people going at damn near 1 a.m? But yeah, that's not a topic I've seen any other fiction tackle. The idea that something you do in a previous life could have pained you so much that it reverberated through ages it's, oh my god, that is some story right there. Also, Elaine's Ilyena, right? That's pretty much a given. Can we just mark that as a given? I'm pretty sure that's what that is. I wonder if we'll ever hear anything about Rand's previous lifetimes before Luciferin, because at the minute, it's all Luciferin. But we know from Brigitte, but that like, there's more than just one previous lifetime. There's many, across spans of ages. Obviously, this is the first time he's reborn since he's been Luciferin that we know of, but I don't think we're going to get a wrench thrown at us in that regard. But what about before Luciferin? Like, was he still super important? Was Luciferin his first life, maybe? Like, maybe Brigitte's had more lives than him? Like, when does a life begin? Does it ever begin? The Wheel of Time seems like an Ouroboros, it's infinite, you know? I don't know. I have so many questions, and I don't think they'll all be answered by the end of this series. Like, I have a feeling that the kind of questions I'm asking now are the kind of questions people still have when they finish the series. Because having the exact machinations of how the universe works laid out before you isn't something that usually happens. But then this is a Wheel of Time. I don't know what to expect about any of this. Now, a little bit about the big final fight in Camelin before the end of this video, because that's the most recent thing I've listened to. It's the end of this book. It's an important plot point. Actually, let's take it a little bit before that, first of all. Before we move on from Lanfear and Moraine, I do just want to quickly mention, we don't see the bodies. So we know that Red Door leads to a different world, planet, dimension. Maybe the reason Lan can't feel her anymore is because she's so far away, or because she's in a different dimension. I'm not ruling out the idea that Moraine and maybe even Lanfear might still be alive. So if Moraine pops up later, just know, called it. Also, please no spoilers if I am right. I would like to find it out for myself. No one's spoiled anything for me yet. I'm just very paranoid. Anyway, yeah, the final fight. When Rand goes through and all that lightning comes down and it kills Matt and it kills Avienda and it kills Asmodean, I honestly, that was kind of like its own red flag in that I was like, okay, this is going to be reversed, right? Because that was a lot of main characters to die at once, given how much we've seen of this story and only had one main character die, and very recently. Plus, the way it was described as a nightmare scenario, I didn't think it was a dream sequence or anything silly like that. But my mind did immediately go to, okay, how can this be reversed? What are the laws of this universe? Do we know of a way to reverse stuff like this from happening? Well, we know that they can't be risen from the dead, but we know that Balefire can kind of reverse events in its own way. So I didn't call the way it would happen. I don't know enough about this universe to know that, like, oh, using Balefire to kill Ravine would undo what Ravine had done. But I was thinking in that direction. So when it happened, I was like, okay, yeah. The second Ravine went pop, I was like, okay, I'm sure Avienda and Matt and Asmodean are back alive and well. Although not by the end of the book, Asmodean gets killed by who knows who it is. The easy answer would be that one of the Forsaken has travelled and killed him. But the way he says you implies, like, recognition but surprise. So it's almost like it's someone within Rand's group of people. Could be another Forsaken in disguise, but what if it's Lanfear who survived the same way I just mentioned that Moraine might have survived? Just saying, it seems like you could get a little bit more out of Lanfear in this story than has actually been gotten out of so far. Wouldn't be surprised to see her make a return. It would also be a good blow to morale for Rand to be like, oh wait, she lived and Moraine didn't? No. I was half certain that Rand was accidentally going to kill Nynaeve in that final fight because he's throwing Balefire around without knowing what he's aiming at. He's being very dumb in that way because, Moraine's like, be careful with Balefire, and he's like, thanks, I won't. But I'll admit, while I might have semi-predicted it, it was nice to see him get back and see that his friends are still alive. Rand's the kind of character who just gets incessantly shat on by the story he's written into, so it's nice to see something good happen to him for a change, isn't it? I think he's as surprised as I am. Also, just before we end the video, sorry it's a bit haphazardly paced between different parts of the story, but I did just remind myself, one of my favourite things about Moraine's death, the way it was done, was that in her letter she just slyly puts in, that she knows that Rand's court bard is secretly one of the Forsaken. She knew the entire time. And I think that's really cool for two reasons. One, it shows us that Rand's not as clever as he thinks he is, because he's like, wow, even Moraine doesn't know that I'm up to this. I have something over her in terms of intelligence and wisdom, and he didn't. As much as the power dynamic shifted, that much was true at that time still. But two, as the reader, you'd very much expect Moraine to be super against what Rand is doing with Asmodean, given how cautious she's been about Lanfear and how powerful the Forsaken are in the past. But it's almost showing that, like, she's like, hey, I can be cool too. Anyway, I'm almost home, but more importantly, that's everything I have to say about the Fires of Heaven. I mean, if I've forgotten anything, I'll edit this in with a different sounding microphone now. But if not, thank you very much for listening and putting up with my heavy breathing as I'm walking home and all that. And a slightly different sounding microphone and the fact that I couldn't be bothered to wait till tomorrow to record this. This is truly a self-serving series. But you're here for it, so thank you very much. I'm off to go read the final book before the quote-unquote Great Slog begins. So join me back here for maybe in 3 weeks or maybe in 3 months for Blurbal reasoning about the Lord of Chaos. I am still loving every second of this series.